Welcome to Mach 10 Sports in this February 19th, 2024 episode. You probably noticed we're not at the home base. We're not at the home fort, the Mach 10 studio. I'm at the office, actually, finishing up some things, but I need to be bringing it to you live. We're still going to bring you the show, no matter where from. Well, man, we have a fantastic show lined up today. I'm fired up. Two guests. We got two guests today. Two fantastic guests between Graham Coffey, the co-founder of DawgCentral.com, and then Trey, Wallace, senior college sports writer for OutKick coverage on Fox as well. Before we really get deep, let me send them the link real fast, and we will get rocking and rolling. Perfect. Sent to both of them. We are rocking and rolling. Again, guys, I appreciate you joining us on this February 19th episode. We got a good one. Not in our normal studio, not in our home base. But you know what? We're in the Stormtrooper White. We're a road team today, but we're still going to get it done. Actually broadcasting live from the office. So here we go, guys. Again, like I said, two fantastic guests. Graham Coffey, co-founder of Dawg Central, will be joining us here around 7:40. Trey Wallace from OutKick, college football or college athletic sports writer for OutKick, will be joining us around 7:15. We'll review the week that was in the hardwood. There's only 3 weeks left. We're going to have a photo shoot finish to who is going to win the SEC regular season championship. We'll talk about that. Then it was opening weekend on the diamond in baseball. Just give you some initial thoughts. I don't want to run down through these box scores with you on baseball. You don't want to hear that. So I'm just going to give you some brief initial thoughts on some teams like Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia. Thought they had some good weekends initially off the bat. Again, not all schedules are created equally. Most teams did not really get challenged, I should say, this past weekend. Teams like Tennessee did. They played essentially a Big 12 slate, and I thought Kentucky did with USC upstate. But we'll talk about that. But let's get right to it around the SEC. Alabama hires two new coaches, an offensive line coach, Chris Kapalovic, and tight end coach Bryan Ellis, who has come over from Georgia Southern. The offensive line coach, Chris Kapalovic, he is coming over from – he was at Michigan State, initially got hired at Baylor, hadn't coached a season there. So if you're looking at his stats, I've seen some people do this on social media and they've gotten it wrong. Don't look at what Baylor did last year. He wasn't there. He just got brought on by Dave Aranda. But the Kapalovic file – just not going back too far. He's with Larry Fedora, really a Larry Fedora guy going back to Southern Miss days. You had him at North Carolina, co-OC offensive line coach. And then you had him at Colorado with, who was he with? Yeah, so he was there in 2019, and they got let go at Colorado at that point. And then he went in 2020. He went with Mel Tucker to Michigan State when he signed that big deal. That was it. And then got let go this past year. From people I know around the industry, everybody raves about him. Everybody's got positive things to say about Coach Kapalovic. Talk to people who even dealt with him a little bit off the field, his support staff people. That's a good gauge on how they treat people. People that can't always do things for them heard nothing but rave reviews on Coach Cap because of that. So I think this too early to tell. But again, I went back and watched a press conference with him in Michigan State. Seems like a real relationship kind of guy, and that's what the offensive line coach is. It's a different position. It's got to have some unity. A lot of five guys working together. If one guy messes up, they're all messed up. I know that's cliche, but they got to have a good relationship with their position coach, and I think Coach Cap can be that. And then you get the offensive coordinator, Bryan Ellis from Georgia Southern, been at Georgia Southern, really part of the Helton tree. He was at Western Kentucky with Tyson, been there from 2019 to 2021. He got co-OC inside receivers title. And then Georgia Southern, offensive coordinator since 2022, and worked with the quarterbacks. Again, he's at USC in 17, the Helton tree. As a tight ends coach, I mean, you're getting an OC at a solid program like Georgia Southern. Why not? I mean, I heard he's a real was texting the DFO at Georgia Southern today. Really cares about his players. Great recruiter, really knowledgeable guy, X's and O's. And I know you're going to hear that about everybody. Let's call a spade a spade. You're going to hear that about a lot of people. But I just wanted to kind of bring that up, go over some stuff I hear. Probably cover this a little bit more on Thursday because we got a deep, in-depth episode today. So I didn't want to burn up all the time from that. I want to talk to some more people before we really get rolling on that. But 2 rave reviews so far. 2 phenomenal reviews I've heard from people. Again, you're always going to hear that, so take it with a grain of salt. But again, Alabama offensive line coach, their new offensive line coach, Chris Kapalovic, and then the new tight end coach, Bryan Ellis, coming over, that was the offensive coordinator at Georgia Southern. He is now the tight ends coach. So just want to talk about that around the SEC. And Sark, how about Steve Sarkisian? Set to earn, getting the big pay raise, $10.3 million in 2024. Salary will increase $100,000 every year until 2030. And then he'll be earning $10.9 million at that point. So for context, people don't know, last season Sark was reportedly making $5.6 million, which had him making less than coaches made him. He made less than guys like Lance Leipold, Kansas head coach, Pat Narduzzi, Chip Kelly, PJ Fleck over at Minnesota with some schools I looked at, or some names I saw that he made less than. But more notably, Sark would have been paid less than his fellow SEC comrades now. Shane Beamer was one. I think Eli Drinkwitz was one. Sam Pittman was certainly one. I do remember that one. Now, that's not the case anymore. It's not the case. Sark finding himself now, big steep hill after that one playoff push. He's a top five paid coach in the industry now. I mean, he's up there with the retired, what was with Nick Saban. Now Clemson's Dabo Swinney, Kirby Smart at Georgia, and Ryan Day at Ohio State. Sark's in those numbers. And so I saw some people today kind of talking, is Sark a little overpaid? Should they have given him that deal all just 1 year? Or is it kind of one of those things anyone can do it once? Let's see if you can put some consistent years back to back. Kind of agree with that. Why'd you have to go give him that? Just let this contract run out. I don't think he's going anywhere. Where's he going to leave to go to Texas? I mean, it could have been if Alabama reached out, put some feelers out this year. We'll really never know. I mean, unless you're Jimmy Sexton or Greg Byrne, you wouldn't ever really truly know. So I think rushing to immediately double the salary, a little bit of pushing the old Dr. Evil panic button a little bit if you're Texans. So why go and do that right now? This isn't anything against Sark. I just don't think you had to do it because where's he going? Let him go before we go renegotiate that Sark deal. Let him go prove it this year. See if he can go make a 12-team playoff. I mean, odds are just by allowing 8 more teams into the playoff than what he made last year, should be a little bit easier. I just sometimes I don't get the whole – we rush to decisions. These ADs and athletics departments just get taken to the freaking woodshed at times by these contracts. I mean, Jimmy Sexton just completely – taking all these athletics departments to the woodshed. I mean, it really is. Sir. Just posting it right now, getting that out there. Sorry about that, guys. But no, I just sometimes we think we rush to these decisions a little bit. And I think we could have waited because, again, where was he going? This wasn't like he was at, no offense to Ole Miss or Arkansas, where like, hey, some other schools could come sniffing around, pay some more. Yeah. I think they rushed this a little bit. And again, I think Sark's going to be great. I think he'll be the face of Texas. He'll be there for a while, have unlimited success, numerous playoff appearances, probably a national title if you put my feet to the fire, probably. I just don't think you really had to go pull that gun. I think you may have paid him too early, especially that much. Doubled it. I didn't really understand that one. So, again, Texas giving Sark the raise. I understand it. I don't know if I would have made that move. Still think, hey, let's see if you can do it again. Let's see if you can go do it. You put up a 20-point game, you put up a double-double. Let's go see if we can go put up another double-double. That's kind of my mindset, but kind of want to bring that in. Then before we get Trey Wallace, I just want to talk the baseball recap. Remember, I'm not going to go through the whole box score for you. I mean, I'll pull up – let's share the screen, show you the scores. Well, yeah, we had 2 games today with Arkansas and LSU, but I'm going to pull up the baseball schedule. That's basketball. Let's go to baseball. Just kind of from this weekend, starting on Friday, you can go through the whole thing. I mean, you had Vanderbilt having a tough series with FAU all week. I thought Kentucky did a phenomenal job against South Carolina upstate. I mean, these are, again, I don't want to go over through it, so I'm going to stop sharing. I'm just going to kind of tell you just some thoughts. I think that'll be easier. So Tennessee, I think they had a winning weekend versus good competition. The only loss for Tennessee, was against a solid future, was a Big 12 brother in Oklahoma. And God, man, how about the Clemson transfer, Billy Amrick? Phenomenal this past weekend. I think Tennessee probably had the most successful weekend given who the competition was against. I mean, they played 3 games at Globe Life Field against a trio of Big 12 teams. A.J. Russell struck out 10 on opening day, 6-2 win over Texas Tech. A.J. Causey followed him with 4 2/3 scoreless innings. Billy, I just mentioned Amrick, homered in the win. Drew Beam allowed only 1 run and 5 2/3 in his start against Oklahoma. Game Tennessee dropped 5-1, but it was in 10 innings. Score's not as worse as it looked. But thought it was a good weekend for Tennessee. They were my favorite to win the SEC. Feel pretty good about that as we stand in the moment right now. Kentucky, road win at a probable regional team in the Big South. I mean, USC Upstate probably going to be the favorite to win that. Getting strong start mound, impressive defense, timely offense, led to an 11-7 win in game 1, 3-0 win, 9th. Typical Kentucky Nick Mangione baseball. Being aggressive, small ball, put pressure, make the defense make plays. Hey, remember this was the USC Upstate was the favorite to win the Big South, like Campbell. Remember the Camels kind of made a push in the postseason, was a big name around college baseball. This is the same. This is the team in their league. It's supposed to kind of beat them this year. So phenomenal start for Nick Mangione. And the Kentucky Wildcat team getting the sweep, starting 3-0 against a quality team. That's kind of how I judge this weekend. Kind of took into effect who your competition was. I thought A&M didn't play a phenomenal opponent in McNeese State, but they dominated. I mean, combined to 1 in 3 games. You're going to hear this about a lot of teams. If they can pitch, look out. I feel like that's how I know about Texas A&M. You expect what you expect with guys like Jace Lavalette. Big hitter for Texas A&M. It's about the pitching. I mean, Friday, Ryan Prager baffled McNeese State with 5 innings and 1 hit ball. He struck out 9 no walks, which is massive. Shane Sado got the start Sunday and threw 5 shutout innings of his own. I mentioned Jace Lavalette, 2 home runs on Friday. Big win. A&M a big winner, I think, this weekend. Very impressive. Here's another team if they get the pitching going. South Carolina dominated Miami of Ohio by a 30-5 margin, similar to A&M, with a no-hitter on Sunday. If this team can pitch similar to A&M, I think these two teams are very similar this year. Look out. Look out. I'm just telling you. Those are the 2 teams to keep an eye on from a pitching staff standpoint. Then Georgia, Grant Coffey, like I mentioned, from Dawg Central, co-founder. He'll be joining us towards closer to the top of the hour, around 8. But we're going to be talking a little Georgia baseball. Wes Johnson starting off 3-0. They cruised to a 38-7 in weekend total win over UNC Asheville. Looked much improved. Charlie Condon playing 3 different positions, first, third base, I think left field too. I saw him out there. But those are kind of right off the bat, the teams that kind of impressed me. The 6 teams, Tennessee, Kentucky, Texas A&M, South Carolina, and Georgia. The teams that just really – they kind of were underwhelming this weekend. They only got 1 shot. It was Florida. Currently, they're 0-1. Took the first loss to St. John's, but got washed out the rest of the weekend. Again, Florida, one of my favorite. I picked Tennessee to win the league. Florida's going to be in that top 2 or 3 as well. Jack Caglione, Colby Shelton, the freshman transfer from Alabama, who they're moving to shortstop, hit a home run in their loss. But again, St. John's kind of controlled that game. But again, it's baseball. 1 week, 1 game. And then Ole Miss and Mississippi State leaving a little bit underwhelmed. Ole Miss going 2-2 in the islands, going to Hawaii, won the first one in extra innings on Friday night in 13 innings, won the next one, I think 9-4, and just got completely just rocked in the last 2 games. I saw Mike Bianco said it was one of the worst performances in his 24 years he saw just overall. So Ole Miss, again, losing Xavier Rivas early could hurt them. Their Friday ace guy with the UCL tear. Something to keep an eye on. And Mississippi State, they took 2 out of 3 against a solid Air Force group. But again, pitching not really there. I mean, you like what Jordan's doing. You like what Hunter Hines doing. But again, the question mark for both Ole Miss and Mississippi State, it's going to be pitching. You didn't overly see a lot of improvement after week 1. So again, only week 1. Couple teams I was impressed with before we get our guy Trey on. Tennessee, Kentucky, Texas A&M, South Carolina. Remember, A&M, South Carolina, watch out for the pitching. If they can get that going, I trust the bats. Look out for those 2 teams. And then Georgia, Wes Johnson getting his opening win, like what Charlie Condon's doing. Then disappointment, Florida, I think they'll be fine. They only played 1 game, but still 0-1. Then a lot to be determined with Ole Miss and Mississippi State. But with that being said, let's get our guy Trey Wallace on. Trey, what's going on, brother?
Oh man, just got done watching my cousin. He was trying to win Daytona.
Tell us, who's the cousin? Give us a little backstory.
Bubba Wallace, driver of the 23.
Dude, I did not know that was your cousin. I'll be completely honest.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
First cousin. So I was.
So y'all are tight.
Yeah. I'm sure the group chat will be interesting tonight once he gets back to his phone. So that was, man, fun race and coming off a crazy weekend of basketball and football and baseball. Lots of stuff going on in football off the field right now.
Yeah.
And, with basketball, it's heating up as we get, 5 or 6 games left in the regular season. Baseball got off to a hell of a start this weekend. So excited to watch some of the games. Watched Arkansas, get to play. Watched a little bit of Vanderbilt. Saw Tennessee play in Arlington. So good weekend, man, and a lot of stuff on tap when it comes to football this week.
Well, Trey, I think you nailed it all. I think you got off to a great start just telling us about how good of a weekend. It's kind of that crazy time in sports where you got golf, college baseball starting. We talk about NASCAR, we got spring football conference tournaments. We got 3 weeks left in the regular season of basketball. But I read an article of yours the other day. I thought you did a good job explaining it. Tell me kind of what you're feeling, what you're hearing, probably same stuff I kind of am from that perspective of what do you think in this 2-week transfer portal window is going to look like starting on April 15th?
Yeah, I think it's going to be bonkers, and that term gets used a lot. But I think when you look at the teams that did not have a lot of time, and I'm talking about the players here, I'm talking about Washington, I'm talking about Michigan, even with Sharon, I'm talking about Alabama, Arizona. I could go on. G5 schools, South Alabama, Georgia State, teams that lost their head coaches to position jobs at other schools. I just feel like it was such a late cycle this year compared to maybe years past that I think that, and also let me add this too. I think the collective situation when it comes to NIL over the next, let's just say, 2 months or kind of under 2 months from now, when everything's going to kick off. I think these guys are saving up a good chunk of their money right now and trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do when it comes to, finding areas of need? And you have to remember, too, a lot of these players that got new coaches, best way to put it, they're feeling the staff out just as much as the staff is feeling them out. So that's why I feel like this could turn into something where this spring transfer portal period, remember, it's only 15 days now.
Yeah.
You don't get the full month like we got,
Decisions have to be made quicker.
Right. So decisions got to be made quicker. And I think it would be oblivious for people to think that those decisions aren't being made right now in a way. I think that there are players that are looking around. And I talked with a couple of different agents, talked to an assistant coach, and the biggest thing too now is, you got agents, you got runners reaching out, and getting in the ears of these assistants, say, hey, look, this player might be available once the spring portal hits, be aware. So, that's why you have seen colleges really step up when it comes to the transfer portal area of their program and trying to establish a staff that handles that. You've got somebody in a computer right now that is refreshing to see if somebody hits the portal. And that's just where we are in college football. But I think when it comes, a lot of it too, with the NIL part of it is going to come with the case in East Tennessee federal courtroom with the NCAA versus the state of Tennessee and Virginia. Because if the judge sides with those states, NIL, I think, is going to hit a different level because you're going to have coaches being able to talk to these players about money. You're going to have collectives just being straight up front. Hey, you can make $400,000 if you come here. Like, we don't have to hide it anymore. You're getting the bidding war. So I just feel like what we're about to see here in about a month and a half is going to be probably the craziest portal period that we've seen in college football.
No, it's up there. It's like you said, you make a good point. You got teams like Alabama, Washington, Michigan. How are these teams kind of going to look with the coaching changes as well? It'll be a big spring for them because they're going to have to go supplement some talent. And teams like LSU that I feel like in the SEC aren't deep at certain positions. How do they go manipulate that?
And you saw a lot of teams you saw a lot of teams save spots on the roster. Like I think that was a big to do. You look at some of the signing classes out there. Look at the numbers, or some teams under 85 right now. Yeah, a good amount of them. And there's a reason why. Yeah. So that's why I also think the portal period in the spring is going to be a lot bigger. And I don't know if it'll be headlined by like Deion Sanders like it was last year.
Yeah.
But I do think it's going to get a little nutty, especially when it comes down to collectives and NIL.
Could be a little bit deeper, but not as top heavy.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I think. I think that, look, I think you're going to have a team out there, a couple of teams, going to need a starting quarterback. Don't like what they see during the spring. Okay, let's go try to persuade some guy to leave a school. I don't know who it is, but try to persuade a top quarterback to maybe transfer out, come into a program that they know an offense, kind of what it is, something like that. Defensive linemen, running backs. But I do think the amount of money that's going to be spent on some of these players too will go up a notch, especially if the two states get their way in this antitrust lawsuit, or at least get an injunction by the judge that will lead to a trial down the road.
Now, looking ahead to 2020, there's some teams that it kind of, I think Vegas came out, FanDuel set their over-under win total of 5.5. And I'm talking about the Florida Gators here. What is kind of your outlook? I think everybody it's well documented. It's a tough schedule in 2024. I mean, they play the other three big teams in the state, Florida State, Miami, and UCF, along with the SEC schedule. Trey, in your opinion, is Billy Napier, is he the head? Is there a new man in Gainesville, new head man in Gainesville this time next year? Do you think, is this a must-win year? How many wins do you think he has to get to save his job?
I think he's got to get to at least 7. But here's the problem. It's, to me, the back end of that schedule is so difficult. I don't have it right in front of me, but they play, if I'm not mistaken, they play 5 out of 6 weeks, top 15, top 25 preseason schools. I think the first half of that schedule, if they don't come out, start 4-1, something along those lines, I think that's where Billy Napier gets in trouble, because there's a lot of stuff building up right now inside the program, from position coaches to the NIL collective that's going on, to Scott Strickland at AD right now. You look at what he's done when it comes to recruiting, and you would think, okay, Florida should be doing better than this. And Florida should be getting – I know that, okay, I know they went out and got DJ Lagway. I get it. Could be a great talented quarterback. But it's who you're surrounding them with. There's a lot of problems inside the program, and can you take that next step in recruiting in the next, in the next 7 months to show that you're setting yourself up for the future? And I look at it, I look at it the other way too. Look, you got people down in Gainesville that are just tired. They're just apathy going on right now. And I'm not going to get into specifics, with certain aspects that stand out to me more than most. But like I look at a situation where you couldn't really control it because Bill O'Brien was such good friends with Craig Fitzgerald. But Florida just lost their strength and conditioning coach in the second week of February. That's tough, man. And there's a lot of money being spent right now when it comes to assistant coach salaries, when it comes to trying to build a foundation for Billy inside that building that's going to pay off. But here's the thing, if you, let's just say they come out and lose to Miami or something like that, to kind of set the tone in 2024. You're looking at a situation right now where you already got boosters agitated with you. Okay, you already got the fan bases agitated with you. There's people inside that administration that aren't on the same page with Billy Napier right now. So you start bundling all of that up, that's where your problem's going to lie in, where Florida could just say, okay, look, we got to reset. We got to figure out, okay, maybe Napier wasn't that guy. And the other thing is, too, like I hate that people, and this is just how it is in college football, but I hate that people are trying to compare what's going on in Baton Rouge to what's going on in Gainesville, just because that was when that cycle happened with the coaches. When Brian, took the LSU job, Billy went to Florida. LSU was good. Okay, they were prime. They had talent. They had to go fix a couple spots, but they had talent. Florida, you went into a situation where it was just kind of a dumpster fire. And a lot of it has to do with what was going on inside that building that I don't think has kind of been cleaned up yet. I mean, I was talking to a buddy of mine who covers the Gators, and he was telling me, that the staff had a meeting where they sat down and Billy Napier laid out, hey, listen, I want you to block these writers on social media. Like, it's like, this is the type of shit that you're worried about right now? You know, when you're getting ready for spring practice, you're worried about
not who you're following, who's following you on social media. It's like, yeah, it's the stuff that doesn't win us games on Saturday.
And I know what he's doing. He's trying to figure out where leaks are coming from. Okay,
yeah,
you're following this person, you're following whatever. Again, but what I'm saying is there's a lot of problems right now with Florida, and they could come out in the fall and they could start 4-0 and things would be all glitter and happy. But man, that schedule, if they are not competitive with the back half of that schedule, I think there could be some problems in Gainesville for Billy Napier.
Again, Trey Wallace from OutKick joining us. Go give him the follow at Trey Wallace. Trey, again, I appreciate you taking the time. One last question before we get you out of here. How do you think these last 3 weeks of college basketball, and specifically in the SEC, finish out? Who do you think wins the league? Do we get 9 teams in? What's your thoughts?
Man, I'm excited. I mean, I am stoked. We have seen some crazy basketball, and we've seen blowout games when you're kind of not expecting them. You see what Auburn has done at home, and you saw Kentucky go in there and win. You look at what Alabama's kind of doing this thing quietly right now. Like, there's not a lot of people talking about Alabama and them sitting at top.
You're right. They're in sole place by themselves. It looks like it's really probably them in Tennessee at this point, and they got
right. It is. And those two teams will play. I think it's the
next Saturday. It's a week from this. So it's like a week and a half.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very close to the end of the season. And Tennessee's going to have to play Auburn as well. But man, I give credit to Lamont Paris. They hit a block. Okay, you go to Auburn to get beat up. LSU comes in, wins that game. And they should have won. I just feel like we're coming down a stretch where I think Tennessee, if they can continue this path, I think Tennessee probably ends up either at a tie for first place with Alabama. Depends on how that head-to-head goes and whatnot. I think Auburn could sneak up in there, but Auburn's dealing with an injury right now. I look at Florida. I love what Florida's doing.
I like Florida a lot. Florida's that team who gets the second weekend for sure.
They are playing some really good basketball right now, winning 7 of their last 8 games. So I think it's going to be a crazy stretch towards the Final Four, meaning who gets the double byes heading into the SEC tournament. I think that's going to be key for setting up for March Madness. And honestly, I had this conversation with somebody today, one of the head coaches in the Southeastern Conference. I do think that there are 7 or 8 teams that can make the tournament this year, and I do think that they're kind of loaded from that midway spot up top. And this is just one of those things where they're going to eat each other up. I do think the only change that we probably have as a head coach in the Southeastern Conference is Vanderbilt. I think it's time for them to pull the plug on Jerry Stackhouse. That's over. That run, they've lost support from boosters, from fans, from whatnot. I think that run comes to an end with Stackhouse. But other than that, right now, I just feel like this season has it's flown by. But also, man, there are some teams that Kentucky's starting to play a little bit better as well. So this is going to be a fun stretch as we wrap up the regular season, get ready for Nashville.
Trey, what do you think about Mach going to Louisville? That could be.
Somebody ran that by me. I think it was yesterday. If Mach wanted to, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes at Arkansas this year. Okay, but if Mach wanted to reset the clock when it comes to coaching, how far can you take Arkansas? You know what I mean? Like, they've done good in the tournament and whatnot. You get that feeling in coaching. I was talking with a coach about this, and you get that feeling where if you think something's coming in 2 to 3 years, why not go ahead and just reset where you're at?
Beat it, like you said, restart your clock.
Right, like beat it, get ahead. And I think Louisville's that job, man, where propel, and that's the other. But I say that to say this. I think we're about to see some more conference realignment happen.
Yeah.
And I think that even with the Florida State situation, I think that's going to affect some schools in the ACC. So what does it look like for Louisville in 2 years? You have to take all of this in right now when it comes to these head coaching jobs, different conferences. But I don't want to say I'd be shocked if Mach, went to Louisville, just as much as I wouldn't be surprised if Chris Mack, went to Louisville. But I will say, if he wants to start things over, and if he feels like he has done all he can in Fayetteville, why not go try that thing out in Louisville? Not saying it's going to happen, but if they pick up the phone, you at least got to have that conversation.
And I feel like you always hear, too, if you see it for whatever reason, Mick Cronin was or if he left on his own or something like that, maybe Mach tries to
get Mick,
you said again.
Yeah, coming off that loss to Utah, I feel like right now, Louisville's in a dead spot when it comes to talent-wise, when it comes to inside that building. But I do feel like that is a team you can turn around. I feel like Musselman did it at Arkansas. We've seen him do them at other spots. Would he be somebody, or would he even be interested in trying it? It's difficult, man. You don't know how long Calipari is going to be sticking around at Kentucky. The in-state recruiting, it's just the ACC. It's a different animal right now. But if you want another challenge, go try it. We're going to find out soon enough, because I think when it comes down to it, we do start seeing some movement in college coaching at the college basketball level that might shock a few folks.
Well, Trey, I appreciate you joining us, brother. You gave us a lot of good insight, a lot of good intel. Trey Wallace from OutKick. Go give him the follow at Trey Wallace. Trey, I appreciate you taking the time this evening. I know it's a busy evening. You have another media obligation to go to after this, man.
It doesn't stop, buddy. A big week in the college football playoff system with tomorrow and Wednesday and formats. Look, we don't have an off season this. You know it better than anybody. So I appreciate you having me and look forward to doing it again.
Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you.
Again, Trey Wallace joining us. Does a phenomenal job. Go give him the follow at Trey Wallace on Twitter. Does a phenomenal job covering college athletics. You heard him. He very glued in, talks to a lot of people. Mentioned he talked to an SEC football coach, SEC basketball coach. Big guest here tonight. If you joined a little late, he got on right around 7:15, so that'd be the mark to go back. But again, I appreciate him hopping on. Adam Ritter says, is it time to panic on men's basketball? I'm worried. Is he for what team? Maybe I'm assuming South Carolina here. I wouldn't press panic. It's like Trey said. I think they just ran into a rough week. I mean, obviously, Auburn's not 40 points better than South Carolina. We talked about this on Thursday's episode. It's just a rough week. They let Auburn essentially beat them twice against an LSU team who has gotten better. I mean, Jalen Cook's been banged up a little bit, but he was the straw, kind of started the drink I like to use with him. LSU's becoming a more confident team. So that was a dangerous, again, 1 through 11 in this league on a nightly basis. You can get beat if you don't come and play your best. It's just that simple. I haven't been able to say that about the SEC in basketball for about a decade. I think you can say that now. But no, I would not be worried about South Carolina. They're going to be in the tournament. They just need to bounce back this week. Could be a tough week as well, though. They got to go a trip to Pavilion. It's been a tough place to play for some teams. But Graham Coffey should be joining us here soon. And should we get into that? Yeah, we'll get in. So we'll get into a little SEC basketball review. Let's look at the standings real fast while Graham is joining us, and we'll talk about Georgia. Just wanted to get into the SEC standings. Go to men's basketball. Apologize about that, guys. So here we stand. About 3 weeks left. Here's the basketball season. So we got Alabama, sole place, 10-2. Tennessee right behind them. We got that matchup me and Trey talked about. About a week and a half. Not this Saturday, but the next. But Tennessee sitting at 9-3. South Carolina 9-4. Auburn 9-4. Florida 8-4. Kentucky 8-4. Ole Miss 6-6. Mississippi State 6-6. They play on Wednesday night at the Hump. That'll be a big seeding matchup. Texas A&M 6-6. These three teams still have some work to do, in my opinion. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Texas A&M. Right now, if the tournament ended, they're in. We still got 3 weeks. They need to hammer home. I think a team like Ole Miss needs to get one of their next three. They're at Mississippi State, South Carolina at home, or Alabama at home next week. That's the kind of A&M can't afford to lose to Arkansas at home. It's getting to that point in the season. LSU becoming one of the hotter teams in the league, playing really well. I don't think they'll make the tournament. Too many stumbles in the non-conference slate. Starting to play well. Maybe a deep run in Nashville. Maybe. Then you got Georgia, who's just lost numerous close games. Arkansas sitting at 3-9, Vanderbilt 2-10, Missouri 0-12. Kind of feels like we're set here. 14, 13, 12. Who kind of gets in this 11 spot? Kind of feels like Georgia right now. It feels like A&M's going to be getting that. LSU's going to be getting that first day bye. Just if you're A&M, you'd hate to go that far down. But moving on from the standings, I think initially, you got a battle here. Really, 8 up right here for those top 4 spots in the SEC. Now, I really think Alabama, Tennessee are battling for first place. I'll say that. I think those two teams are battling for. I think this is people are like, what about Auburn? It's like the Jalen Williams injury. I know he's not out for the season. That's great news. I think Jalen Williams, one of the better players in the league, more of a quiet leader, leads by example, but I think it's big for Auburn. But so far this year, when Jalen Williams hasn't played well, Auburn hasn't played well. So they need him. Him being out for the regular season, it's not going to hurt him from a tournament standpoint. I think you could collect a few more losses. That's just kind of the way I'm looking at it. I think they could lose a couple more. I mean, let's look at the schedule here. I mean, so they're off this midweek. Then they go at Georgia. Could be tricky. At Tennessee is going to be really tough, especially with Jalen Williams. Mississippi State at home, they should hold serve. At Missouri, they should win. These are really these next three. And he's going to be out for those next three. Auburn needs to go 2-1 in these. They lose more than one. That's disappointing. But again, I think this is just a real battle here in the standings between these 6 teams fighting for those 4 spots. Florida's got to tell me they still play Alabama twice. Alabama still has Florida twice. Starting on Wednesday, then 2 weeks later they go to Gainesville, the Odom. That's going to be a tough matchup for both teams. It's going to be a tough matchup for both teams. I think Auburn's kind of got an easier slate, but they're going to be missing one of their better players. Kentucky still got Bama. Florida's got Bama twice. South Carolina, Tennessee, still got to go to Bama. They get Auburn home. If I had to guess right now, I think the top 4 is going to be not in any specific order, but Alabama, Tennessee. I'm going to go Florida, then Auburn. Call me crazy. Kentucky 5, Missouri, South Carolina 6. I think that's how it's going to finish in the league. I think if I'd go my top 6 rankings right now, but I think Graham. Oh, no, we don't have anybody on yet. But no, that would be my top 6 right now. I would say it would kind of be the order right now. I'd probably Tennessee 1, Bama 2. It's tough between. I'm confident South Carolina finishes that 6th spot. Just how big an effect is Jalen Williams going to be? It's going to be an effect, but how big? Will it be a loss at Stegman Coliseum at Georgia on Saturday kind of effect? I think at Tennessee, people expect that loss. But does he make that big of a difference? Because Mike White's traditionally kind of coached circles around Bruce Pearl at times, even going his days back to his Florida days. So give me Tennessee, Bama. I'm going to go Florida, then Auburn. So I'm going to make it finish. Then I'm going to go Kentucky, South Carolina. Said it. I think that's the way it is going to go right now from that perspective. Let me stop sharing the old screen there for you. Next, we got the NCAA announced its top. Let me pull up the screen again. Its top 16 seeds on Saturday. Now, I was in the middle of some games. So let me pull it up for you. Not that one. There it is. So here it is. Here's the view. This is the best way to look at it. So the NCAA just started doing this, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, where they announced the top 16 seeds if the tournament ended today. This was this past Saturday. So they did it by region. So you had the 1 seeds were Purdue, UConn, Arizona, and Houston. Then you got, here's an SEC team. In the Midwest, the 2 seed Tennessee Volunteers, North Carolina, Kansas Marquette. Marquette, man, UConn took a beating to Marquette, didn't they? And at a conference. You got your 3 seeds, Baylor, Iowa State, Duke, and Alabama there in the South region. So there's another SEC team. And then your 4 seeds, San Diego State, Wisconsin, Auburn from the SEC, and Illinois. So you had 3 teams from the SEC. Tennessee's a 2 seed, Alabama's a 3 seed, and Auburn in the initial top 16 seeds if the NCAA tournament ended this past Saturday. 3 weeks to go, though, but just wanted to briefly cover that topic while we are rolling through. Let's see what else we got before Graham gets on here. Let's go over the power rankings. Oh, we're waiting on Graham. Let's get the SEC power rankings. Let me go back and check. These are mine from this week. The SEC power rankings. Give it to me. Tell me where I'm wrong. But here we go. Starting at 14 for 3 weeks. We got Missouri, again, winless. It speaks for itself. Again, I think this whole team offensively has been 8 through 10 from their bench last year. I mean, Noah Carter, they're better with Shawnee's, but they took Ole Miss down to the wire. But again, will Missouri get that win? We don't know. At Vanderbilt, I agree with Trey. Trey Wallace. I think the Jerry Stackhouse thing is going to run its course. I think it's going to be a little bit. I think it's going to run its course. Then Arkansas must. Just kind of feels like it's a reset. I agree with Trey across the board with that. But they come in at 12. Mekhi Mitchell played well the other day. They could have got a road win at Mississippi State. They didn't, but they had an opportunity. I think Georgia comes in at 11. I like this Georgia team, but they just can't do the little things right to close out games. It's like little things like Blue Cane. They're playing Alabama. It was a close game. They've been down 2 or tied lately. And he tries to do a poster dunk on somebody, and it goes out of bounds. Take the shot, man. Like, don't be trying to get on a poster. I understand that's a freshman, but it's stuff like that. They've been in every game. They could have beaten Florida twice, could have beaten Alabama. They sit there at 11, kind of a compliment to how deep the league is. Then 10, Texas A&M. I'm going to go Texas A&M right here. They coming in at 10. They got to beat Arkansas at home. They got to get revenge against Arkansas at home. So they're coming in at 10. Don't love them. They got to start collecting some wins. LSU right now, probably the hottest team in the outside of Florida, playing one of the better. Again, once Jalen Cook got in, he was the straw that stirred the drink. He's been banged up with a hammy a little bit, but it's a confident team now. They went and got a big win at Colonial Life Arena on Saturday in Columbia. But it's a confident team. Played Alabama probably even closer twice than people would realize unless you really watch the game. You look at the final score. They were in it in the first half in both games there. But I like LSU at 9. Mississippi State coming in at 8th, Ole Miss 7th. I think you're splitting hairs a little bit with both those teams. Again, they match up on Wednesday. Big matchup at the hump. Ole Miss I could see winning that, but Ole Miss's body language a little bit at times. Like, haven't asked Matthew Morrell, Alan Flanagan, guys like that to guard consistently. Yeah, they look tired. They kind of look tired. Ole Miss isn't playing its best basketball right now. Mississippi State may be one of the worst free throw shooting teams I've seen in my life. I mean, it's every game. It's like they're 14 for 28 at the free throw line. It's something awful. I mean, I think State's going to make the tournament, but I would be shocked if they got past the first weekend. I'd be baffled at that point. Ole Miss has a higher ceiling just because Mississippi State's inability to score, but kind of 7A, 7B there. We'll see. State trying to even up the series this week. South Carolina, the guy in the chat room said, should they panic? No, just a rough week. I think they let LSU beat them twice. Auburn beat them twice. Again, Auburn's not 40 points better than South Carolina, but I think they let that drag into the LSU game at home. Early game at noon, kind of sleepy. LSU, a hungry team, kind of starting to feel themselves a little bit. But I think South Carolina's going to end up in this 6th spot. Great improvement for Lamont Paris. They were picked to finish last, but it's a compliment to his season, but they're not a top 4 team. They're not a true title contender, but still an improved team. Auburn, without Jalen Williams, I can't put them any higher than 5 right now, especially the way Kentucky, Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee are playing. So I have Auburn at 5. Still think Auburn will probably finish a top 3 to 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. How long Jalen Williams is out and what is the effect when he comes back in will be interesting. Kentucky, the team that just went and kind of handled Auburn, doing what nobody's done to Auburn in years. Kind of beat them by double digits. Alabama won there last year, but it wasn't like that. Kentucky's controlled from start to finish. When Kentucky's playing their best, they have the highest ceiling in the league. It's just, can they consistently do that? I'm not as sold as they fixed their defensive issues as some have thought. Ole Miss and Auburn this past week, Kentucky's 2 big wins, missed a lot of open shots. But again, I mean, it is what it is. The scoreboard says. But we'll see. They play Alabama on Saturday. If they leave Alabama open like that, Alabama will make more than Auburn and Ole Miss did last week. But I like Kentucky at 4. Florida, probably one of the teams I like the most right now. I think this is a second weekend team, Sweet 16 team, deep team. They got a big matchup on Wednesday, big opportunity to go to Coleman Coliseum, get one of the bigger wins in the league right after Kentucky's trip to Auburn. But I like Florida right now. They still got Bama twice. But I think they're a potential second weekend team. Alabama, still don't like the front court. Kind of scares you a little bit. But I think they're second there, that big matchup, them in Tennessee in a week and a half. That's it. And then I got Tennessee at 1. I just think in a series on a neutral floor, Tennessee's the best team in the league. It's just got to show that consistency. You can't go on the road and play like you did at A&M. But that is the SEC Week 16 power rankings. Tell me what you think in the comments. Let's get to my guy, though, Graham Coffey, as we get on here. Graham, what's going on, brother?
I'm doing well, man. How about yourself?
Doing well, brother. How's everything going over there in Georgia, in the Peach State?
It's good. So I'm actually out west in Colorado, but
are you, dude?
Yeah.
I swear to God, I thought for the longest you were in Atlanta. But you told me you're in Colorado. That sounds familiar. Now you said that, I'm like, how did I not know that?
No, you're good. I'm out there for a lot of the fall, and I'm in Atlanta pretty often.
So it's what is it right now? 6:45 for you?
Yeah, 6:45.
6:45. Well, Graham, let's get right to it again. I appreciate you joining us. Graham Coffey, co-founder of Dawg Central. Appreciate him joining us out there. Hell, he could be skiing the mountains right now instead of here with us. Graham, tell us, what's some kind of initial thoughts heading into the 2024 spring for Georgia, for Kirby Smart, and then rolling into this really kind of new era, I feel like, kind of in 2024 with the 12-team playoff. What's some kind of questions you're looking forward to, some things you're excited to see?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the biggest question for Georgia and where the season kind of broke down for them last year is probably on the defensive line, right? Like you saw them, I think, play pretty well on a down-to-down basis against Alabama in the SEC championship game, but then there were some key moments, especially late in the game, where they looked a little worn out, and they just didn't have quite as many bodies that they trusted to throw in there as in 2021 and 2022. And I think that kind of caught up to them when they really needed stops late. Bama was able to get a few first downs and run out the clock on that game, and Carson Beck never touched the ball again. And that was kind of a theme, I think, throughout a lot of the season for Georgia. There were some – they never really had that dominant interior line presence, and then there was a lot of issues on the edges. I think, there were times where the actual edge defenders and the outside linebackers got blame for some things that maybe, were more kind of on the inside linebackers, not scraping as well as they could have, and maybe not, handling gap assignments like they should. But, I think that is the big question for Georgia in 2024 is just they've got a ton of young talent. That's where Georgia's put their NIL focus and their resources is like recruiting big bodies, recruiting, guys like Damon Wilson, Michael Williams, those kind of 5-star elite type of players. And can you get them to play at the level that you would expect them to according to their recruiting rankings?
And just the last 48 hours, I forget BMAC. It's
Saturday. Yeah, 48 hours.
Saturday left going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to be the wide receivers coach. Who's some names that we should be looking out for to potentially take over Georgia's wide receiver vacancy or coaching vacancy right now?
Yeah, so I mean, there's we're still kind of in that early phase where it's a little how should I put it? Not guessing, but we're still in kind of a speculative area. Jimmy Smith is one to watch for sure. The Arkansas wide receiver coach, like lots of buzz around him. He was coach at Cedar Grove in the state of Georgia for a long time. Was an assistant there for 6 years and head coach. He spent, I think, 12 years at Cedar Grove. Like he is a running backs coach, but that from a recruiting standpoint, familiarity standpoint, like I would expect him to at least have a conversation with Georgia. I think there will be I don't know if you'd formally call it an interview or not, but that's a name that I've heard a lot about. Also the wide receiver coach at Georgia Tech, that's working with Buster Faulkner and that crew. Josh Crawford came from Western Kentucky, another guy with a lot of high school ties to the state of Georgia. There's been, as far as ideas, like those are two guys that I think will definitely get a phone call. As far as ideas and guys that, I wouldn't be surprised to see Georgia talk to, like your old friend James Coley is down the street in Columbia.
Graham, I was literally about to ask you about that next one. If that could, what would the fans' reaction be to that? Would they be okay with that as long as he wasn't calling plays?
He was a great recruiter for Georgia. Yeah, I think as long as he's not touching the playbook, I think Georgia fans would be not just fine with it, but I think would be excited about it.
No, you're right. Like he does a good job down in Miami getting guys like that, like Kevin Ridley. So you're right. He does get good players down there. I was just interested to see
James Cook
would be with that.
Yeah, I mean, and he went over to the defensive side of the ball for some of those South Florida kids too, like Tyson Campbell, Tyreek Stevenson. Both were, very, very influenced by Coley's South Florida ties. So I think it'd be huge for Georgia if they can talk him back into coming. It's just a question of, is there any hard feelings still lingering from Georgia hiring Todd Monken basically, while he was on staff as the OC and then him leaving to go to Texas A&M. I think it's been 5 years now. There has not been a market for him as a play caller. I think that kind of helps in a sense. It's not just that Georgia didn't want him to call plays. Truthfully, nobody's wanted him to call plays since then. But he is a very good recruiter, and I think he's a better developer than probably people give him credit for. Like he's a good coach.
No, you're 100% right. It's like you said, he wants to get back in that kind of calling plays, maybe flirted with Mario at Miami a little bit. Like you said, nobody's ever officially bit. Yeah, I'll be interested to see where Georgia goes with this. I'm actually excited to keep up with this. But Graham, transitioning over to basketball, I'm looking up the standings here for a minute. So, all right, so year 2 for Mike White. What was your thoughts? I always want to know. I see you talk on social media about this. What were your initial thoughts on that hire when they first hired Mike White away from Florida?
I think it's mixed, right? Because, like, there's a reason why, Florida fans have grown kind of stale on him. But also, the standard for Florida basketball and the standard for Georgia basketball over the last 20 years are night and day from each other. Yeah. So, you're talking about a guy who's been coach of the year in the SEC, coach of the year in the WAC. Like, he's done some good things at kind of all different levels of college basketball. He played in the conference. And I think he came into Georgia, like, having some understanding of the staffs and the personnel that Georgia was facing. And I think that has won games for UGA, just his knowledge of the league and how it works. At the same time, you look down the road and, like, Lamont Paris at South Carolina, where he has that crew in year 2 versus where Georgia is. Some of that is portal roulette in a way, right? Like, there is, I think, an element of randomness a little bit to some of this transfer stuff when you're turning over a roster as quickly as Georgia and South Carolina have over the last 2 years. But yeah, my initial reaction to it was that I couldn't think of anybody else who had been to an Elite Eight that was going to have any interest in taking the Georgia job. And, from that standpoint, like, Mike White went to 5 straight NCAA tournaments at Florida. If you could do that at Georgia, like, no exaggeration, you're talking statue territory for the Georgia basketball program.
Yeah, right outside the stadium. Yeah, you're right.
So I thought it was a good hire. I thought, not to play the greatest hits here, but, like, I kind of looked at it the same way that I looked at the Josh Heupel hire for Tennessee football. If I can speak a different language, was like, get somebody in that will stabilize things, that is organized, that can instill a positive culture and, kind of start building your roster back up and build a foundation. He might not be the guy that takes you to a national title, but, like, he is going to be a guy that, gets you back into a conversation and moves things into a positive territory.
Yeah, I like the word you use there, stabilize. Like, it was kind of that time for Georgia. I feel like it's kind of like, I think you told me the Georgia. I think people thought Tom Crean, that hire was probably going to be they definitely thought it was going to be better than it ended up. And he kind of had my guy, what's his name? When I was there, Mark Fox. Mark Fox, there had made the tournament 1 year, lost to Michigan State in the first round. It's just kind of like there hasn't really been any consistency. Maybe Mike White can bring that in. I always like Mike White. It's like their sets and stuff, they run half quarter, good stuff. I mean, I feel like they always take Bruce to the wire. That's why I'm not totally sold that Georgia doesn't win on Saturday. Maybe this is the weekend they finally get that big win, especially with it being Auburn's first game without Jalen Williams.
It might be. And, I think he's almost kind of hurt himself, right? Because I think early in the year, he probably squeezed more out of that team than the talent really maybe should have.
Yeah, I remember watching them against Oregon that first game, and it wasn't awesome, but then you saw them grow throughout the first that conference week and on and on. Yeah, you saw them get better.
They don't get blown out. You know what I mean? Like, last year they went to Alabama, I think first or second week of February, and that game was over in 5 minutes. They were beat by 48 points. And then this year, you have Alabama on the ropes on your own home court. Like,
probably should have won that game.
Yeah, and I think that's the frustration for Georgia people is, like, that team for the first 30 minutes of every game probably plays a little bit above expectations, but they just haven't finished. They look tired at the end of games. Some of that's a depth issue. When they were in out-of-conference play, like, they were getting a lot of help from their bench, and they were playing 10 guys a night, and they just don't, they've really got 7 that they can safely play in SEC play. And they really only have one big man, and Chiwa has nice moments, but he's a little flawed. And so I think, like, they're a team where if they are shooting well from behind the 3-point line, like, they can go out and they can compete with the best teams in the league. And we've seen them do that. And we've seen them almost beat the Tennessees and
Tennessee, Alabama. Yeah. Could have beat Florida at least once.
Right. But I think that's the frustration is just sort of like, why aren't they? I don't think anybody expects them to win all those games, but just they haven't won any.
Let's get one. Yeah. Well, Graham, last question before we get you out of here again. Graham Coffey from Dawg, co-founder of Dawg Central, joining us. Appreciate you joining us all the way from Colorado. Again, I knew that, but I don't know why I didn't know that. But it was opening weekend in the SEC on the diamond. Obviously, Georgia bringing in a new coach, Wes Johnson, pitching coach from LSU. Got the sweep against UNC Asheville. What's the vibes and first year expectations for Wes Johnson? Obviously, you got Condon, he's a big name in the league, one of the faces of the league. Graham, you personally, what's kind of your expectations year one for Wes Johnson?
I think the expectations for everybody are pretty like tempered and reasonable. Georgia's behind a lot of the SEC from a facility standpoint. They're working on those things. Like those projects are underway, but he's, I think, taken over a program that kind of lived off of the amount of talent that was 70 miles down the road in Atlanta for a while. And then just sort of as the world has gotten flatter, so to speak, like more and more of those kids are going to SEC West programs, and you're just not, you're not maybe keeping a Gordon Beckham at home in this day and age. You were in 2008, but now that guy's probably going to Vanderbilt or LSU. And so I think Georgia's doing the things from an administration standpoint they need to do to kind of fix that. The vibes are good, though, around like that program in general, and just Johnson, like his guys like him a lot. It seems like there's positivity and they like playing for him. They had a really good series this weekend. I think, hitting the baseball was not ever really the problem for them last year. Pitching was. It's UNC Asheville, so obviously not rushing to any conclusions about it, but they had some guys that went out there and threw some nice, 3 and 4 inning stretches. Curious to see, like, can they get 2 reliable starters by the time they get to league play and kind of figure out who those guys are going to be. But I do think they'll be better than they were last year. The transfer help that they brought in, at least through, one series, like those guys look pretty productive. They've got some pop. I think there's a little more power in that lineup than I expected there to be. So I think they'll probably make a little more noise than I thought they would.
Before we get you out of here, you brought up a good point. And I don't know if it's the exact reason, but my question to you is, why do you think with as much baseball talent as there is in the state of Georgia, Georgia hasn't been this consistent? You mentioned a little bit, maybe the world's flatter. I like that term you used. And maybe just the world's smaller, or I should say bigger. Like they can go see these other programs through social media. You think that kind of has something to do with it, or do you think the lack of kind of tradition in baseball? I mean, I know, hell, I was a senior in high school the year like you just talked about with Gordon Beckham, and what was the big first baseman's name? I forget what that kid's name was.
I was a freshman at Georgia when that was all going on. I forget.
With Perno and them, like should have beat Fresno State and won the national championship. But why don't you think Georgia should be or why haven't they been a consistent, just in-state talent should probably be a top 2 or 3 team every year?
Totally. Yeah. No, I think, and to your point, like they have a national championship, I think in 1990, which is a long time ago, but like they've done it. Right. I think for Georgia, it's twofold, right? Like Perno was kind of an institution there, and he took over from Ron Polk, the great Mississippi State head coach, who, really kind of set the foundation for the modern era of Georgia baseball. And they were able to just sign these kids from 70 miles down the road. And Perno, I think, for a long time, he was just this really reliable commodity in the SEC baseball kind of, atmosphere, so to speak. Like he was just a guy that people knew and trusted, and you felt good about sending your kid to him. And so that sort of made up for like, hey, we don't really need to get into a facilities arms race in baseball. And when Greg McGarity was the AD at Georgia, he was, notoriously tight with the purse strings. And I think that went across all sports, and football included. But like really, really on those non-revenue sports, like while a lot of the SEC was turning baseball into sort of the third most or second most important sport on certain campuses, Georgia really wasn't making very much investment in terms of, building more premium seating or, building more training facilities and all of that. And so I think you looked up one day and all these kids were streaming to Vanderbilt and LSU and all these places. And it's like, well, why is this happening? And it's because you had a few bad years that kind of ended that Perno era. And then you find yourself in a spot where you don't have the same things to pitch these kids.
No, that makes complete sense. Well, Graham, I appreciate you joining us, man. I mean, I know it takes to Monday night. I appreciate you getting on.
Absolutely.
Taking the time. Again, Graham Coffey, co-founder of Dawg Central. Go give him the follow at Graham Coffey DC. Graham, we'll get you on here soon, brother. I appreciate you hopping on, man.
Yeah, man. Always enjoy chatting with you. Always enjoy listening to your stuff, man. Always makes me think. So keep it up.
Appreciate it, man.
Absolutely.
Have a good night. Again, Graham Coffey does a phenomenal job, brings good insight from a standpoint. If I believe, right, he had to correct me, I think he has a family as a coaching background. I go subscribe to Dawg Central. I do. Does a phenomenal job with some insight into what's going on behind the scenes over at Georgia. But we got a little bit to go. We're 1 minute past the hour, so we're at 61 minutes. We already went to the basketball SEC standings, announced the NCAA top 16 seeds they did. You had Alabama, Tennessee, and Auburn coming in those top 3 16s. Tennessee's a 2 seed, Bama a 3 seed, Auburn 3. I went through my SEC power rankings. It's going to be battled for the top 4. I think the SEC is being battled right now between Alabama and Tennessee for that league crown. And then we'll get to we'll quickly review. I'll just touch on it. The weekend that was in the SEC. Then we'll review this upcoming midweek matchup. I don't want you to think we didn't talk about the weekend because it was a good weekend, but we won't talk about it as long. Alabama getting the 175 win over Texas A&M. Alabama kind of just got Texas A&M into playing their style. Alabama was up 14 at the half. A&M just at that point they were going to have to go play Alabama's game. Buzz Williams said it in his press conference going into the game. If we got to go play Alabama's game, we have no chance to win. He was right. Alabama collects its 8th, which is crazy, 8th 100-point performance of the year. It's probably the best Alabama offense in the program's history. It probably is. We talked about it with Graham. Florida getting the 88-82 win over Georgia. Georgia at home had another opportunity to beat Florida. Florida sweeps Georgia. Florida won 5 of their last 6, probably one of the hotter teams in the country. A legit second weekend team, I'm telling you. I talked about it in the power rankings. Big win for Florida. They got a big opportunity on Wednesday at Alabama. We'll discuss in a minute. Mississippi State 71, Arkansas 67. Mississippi State survives at the hump. These are the kind of games Mississippi State cannot lose. They have to hold serve. They can. But, look at it here. The free throws. Watch this. Look at Mississippi State's free throws here. Where is it? 59%, 19 for 32 at the charity stripe. That's horrendous. That's not going to get it done. But it's the same thing every night. If I can always see it. It's like 14 to 26 and stuff like that. Mississippi State got lucky. Mekhi Mitchell gave them all kind of hell. Mississippi State's reeling a little bit. They need this win against Ole Miss at home on Wednesday. They survived, though. Again, big upset here. LSU getting the 64-63 win over South Carolina. South Carolina let Auburn beat them twice. Remember, Auburn took it to South Carolina, won by 40 points this past Wednesday night at Neville. But LSU playing kind of similar to Florida. 2 teams coming out of nowhere right now, playing really good basketball. Jalen Cook, straw stirs the drink. Been hurt a little bit. An aggressive LSU team that's really getting comfortable with their Matt McMahon system. Be interested to see what they do this week. They could win out. Look at it. Look at the remaining schedule. They got Kentucky midweek at home. Could Kentucky be – both these teams coming in off big wins. Kentucky at Auburn, LSU at South Carolina. Who can put that to bed quicker will probably who wins this game potentially. But all winnable. Kentucky at home, Mississippi State at home, Georgia at home, at Vandy, at Arkansas, and Missouri at home. Now, will they win them all? Probably not. But LSU set themselves up for a decent seed in the SEC tournament to make a run. They're probably not going to make the NCAA tournament. A little too far gone, but they can set themselves up for a decent SEC tournament seed to make a run. Kentucky, probably their best game of the season, getting the 70-59 win over Auburn. We talked about it. Auburn losing their second best player, Jalen Williams. He's the straw that kind of stirs their drink. They've struggled when he hadn't played well. Well, he can't play well if he's not playing. Kentucky, again, best team when they're playing their best. Highest upside of the league, in the league. It makes sense. They recruit really well. But that's probably Kentucky's best game from top to bottom. We talked about it briefly, but Kentucky getting a big win. Tennessee doing what they do against Vanderbilt at home. 88-53 win. Gets a Vanderbilt team coming off a big win against Texas A&M early in the week. Then Ole Miss, kind of like Mississippi State. Crazy enough, they both play this week. Slopping together a win at home against Missouri, get the 79-76 win. These are the games you can't afford to be losing if you're Ole Miss, A&M, Mississippi State right now, to the Missouris, Arkansas, Vanderbilts of the world. Well, Vanderbilt beat A&M. Mississippi State almost lost to Arkansas, and Ole Miss almost lost to Missouri. Those are the three teams, A&M, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. They can't afford bad losses to those type teams right now. You just can't let them happen. Maybe at LSU, because LSU's playing a little better, but those three teams, the bottom three teams, you can't be taking losses with 3 weeks left in the regular season. But that'll be Saturday's games. Moving to this week's games, starting tomorrow night, we have Arkansas at Texas A&M, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone. Currently, right now, Ken Pom has this as an A&M 84% chance of winning this game. I would agree there. A&M needs this, like I mentioned. Can't be losing to the bottom three of Arkansas, Vandy, Missouri. A&M has that opportunity right now. A&M can't afford that. They're in that group of Mississippi State and Ole Miss who play this week. A&M needs to hold serve at Reed Arena against Arkansas. I think they do. Then it's a weird setup tomorrow. It's 6 p.m., another 6 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone game. Feels like they put on light Tuesdays. The league has kind of as we get towards the back of the season. But Tennessee at Missouri, SEC Network. Ken Pom right now has this as Tennessee with an 89% chance of winning. Yeah, Tennessee's in the middle of an SEC title hunt. A Rick Barnes team doesn't go lay an egg against a bad Missouri team. Give me Tennessee all day. Moving to Wednesday night's matchup, we got 4 games. This is a good Wednesday night setup. First, I think the game of the week, Florida at Alabama, or game of the midweek. Florida at Alabama, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone on ESPN2. Right now, Ken Pom has this as an Alabama with an 80% chance of winning at Coleman Coliseum at home. Alabama is – people talk about Neville Reno being a home court advantage, and it is. It's probably the best in the league right now, not going to lie. Coleman Coliseum is because it's Alabama's ability to shoot in that gym, really. In most Coliseums, arenas, gyms, whatever you want to call them, but really at home. I like Alabama in this one, but it's a bad matchup. I mean, Florida's deep. They can score with Pullen, Walter Clayton. I like Handel Gotten. I like Tyrese Samuel. I like the Condon kid. If they go get a bunch of second chance boards like A&M did. Alabama beat A&M bad, but A&M got 26 offensive or got 26 rebounds. Alabama can't be having that against a better offensive team like Florida. Florida's a little bit just a tier under Alabama. I think the best 3 offenses in the league are Alabama, Kentucky, and Florida. Both these teams play again in 2 weeks at Florida. Both teams will probably really enjoy a split over one another. I give Alabama the edge at this one because it's at Coleman Coliseum. They play really well. I think Alabama will get this one done, but it could be close. Then 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone, Georgia at Vanderbilt. Ken Pom giving Georgia the 69% chance of winning this one. Georgia needs this. We're talking about Mike White and pressure being on. I think people see the improvement, but this would be 2 step forwards, 1 step back, or maybe 3 steps back with a loss to Vanderbilt. Mike White needs this one, not from a tournament chance, because I don't really think they're in the tournament. But like Ken Pom says, 69% chance on the road. You should win this. I think Georgia does get that done. Then 2 really good night games. 8 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone, Kentucky at LSU on ESPN. Ken Pom giving Kentucky a 63% chance of winning this game. Remember, I mentioned who can put that big win away from them quicker. They are both big wins, both big road wins. Kentucky at Auburn, dominating from start to finish. Can they go on the road again? Winning back-to-back road games in this league has been tough for everybody, and tough around college basketball. LSU, biggest win of the Matt McMahon era at South Carolina. Who can put it behind them? Is Jalen Cook a little healthy? I think Kentucky was challenged a little bit. I think it's going to be a close game, but give me Kentucky on the road at the PMAC getting a close win. Again, I agree with Ken Pom, 63%. We're going with Ken Pom across the board right now. I agreed with him in the Arkansas A&M game, Tennessee, Missouri, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Vandy. Yeah, we're going. And then finally, the game that was really fun 2 weeks ago at the Pavilion. That place was rocking, by the way. I feel like the hump's going to be the same. 8 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone. Ole Miss returns the trip to Starkville at Humphrey Coliseum on ESPN2. Ken Pom currently gives Mississippi State a 73% chance of winning. Both these teams need this win. Really, Ole Miss needs one of these next 3 to feel like I kind of lock in the tournament, whether it's at Mississippi State, a win Saturday at home against South Carolina, or a win next Wednesday at home against Alabama. They need one. They need to hold serve against the bottom 3, like I mentioned. Mississippi State needs this one, too. I mean, Mississippi State's coming in a little hotter here. Look, I mean, they won, 4 in a row? Because their schedule started so tough in conference play. I mean, Georgia, Missouri, Arkansas. they can put a little streak together here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They go win at LSU, and they feel firmly in the tournament because games against Kentucky, Auburn, at A&M, and South Carolina aren't going to hurt you. So Mississippi State with a win here can start really reeling in that NCAA tournament bid. Whoever wins this game on Wednesday night between these two teams is going to feel really good about their chances in winning or clinching that NCAA tournament bid. As we get closer, I like the league to get to 9. We said Trey mentioned Trey Wallace from OutKick earlier on the show, mentioned maybe 7, 8. I'm starting to feel 9 again, but it's going to come down to those last 3 teams sitting there between Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. They can't afford to lose to any of those bottom teams. Remember that when you're sitting there on your couch watching these games, those matchups between Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, when they're playing the Arkansas, Missouris, and Beatties of the world, they can't afford those. So some big opportunities coming up. But again, I wouldn't chalk with Kim Pom here. But, man, this has been a fun episode, guys. Again, we're not hosting from the home stadium, the home arena, the Mach studio. We had something come up, so we're broadcasting from the office. Had to get some work done. But, again, we're going to give it to you every Monday night, every Monday and Thursday night, 8 Eastern, 7 Central on the SEC Unfiltered platform. We covered a ton. OutKick. Trey Wallace joined us to talk all things SEC sports. Graham Coffey, all things Georgia. We talked Georgia football, big concerns heading into spring football. Mike White, second year. How's he feel he's been doing? Wes Johnson's first sweep weekend on opening weekend is the first year at Georgia's new baseball coach. We talked SEC basketball power rankings. Did Steve Sarkisian deserve that raise? Maybe Texas pulled the trigger a little too early on that. I think maybe let's renegotiate the deal later down the line. Go check that out if you missed that. We talked about Alabama hiring 2 new coordinators. They've hired themselves an offensive line coach and Chris Kapalovic, and then tight ends coach Brian Ellis coming over from the OC at Georgia Southern. But again, guys, I appreciate you joining us on this episode of Mach 10 Sports. You have a fantastic evening.